angry.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome. I'm Ani Anderson. It's my
I'm Brian
partner,
Treskos.
Brian. Hi.
Hey, sorry, I jumped in there.
That's okay. And we're from the Somatic Coaching Academy. We're so excited that whether you're here live or whether you're watching the recording, you're watching this really important topic. We're talking about burnout today and burnout prevention. So we're going to be referencing an article, recent article from Forbes that, Brian, I'm just going to take a second and put into the comments. So no matter where you're watching us, whether you're on Facebook, you're on LinkedIn, or you're on YouTube, that article link should pop on into the comments there so you can see what we're referencing. So as we start to talk about this concept of burnout, Brian, I want to ask you a little bit about your experience with burnout. And one of the reasons that I was thinking about it in relationship to this conversation is just a few months ago, I was on a podcast and the topic of the podcast was about burnout. And one of the questions that I knew they were going to ask me was, have you ever been burned out? And I needed to think about that. I needed to just really sit back and think about it. Now, I've been stressed a number of times in my life. I mean, come on, human being. Burnout, I don't really know about that. And so I traveled back in my mind. Oh, right. But before I did, I had this interesting thing happen, Brian, where I was like, oh my God, I can't talk about the fact that I've never had burnout because it's such a badge of honor. Not just burnout, but like the fact that we're stressed or that things are hard. Like our difficulties are very oftentimes what we bond over in our society. So that's a thing. We could talk about that another time. And I was remembering that the last time I really felt close to something I would call burnout was when I discovered energy medicine, and it was in college. And I think part of the reason that I personally haven't gotten to the places where burnout's really taken me over is because I've lived a life influenced by and practicing energy medicine for the past, I'm going to date myself, 23 years or so, 25 years. So it was really interesting to me because now as this conversation is coming up about burnout, a lot of the solutions that people are bringing to the table actually have their roots in energy medicine. So that's why I want to start this question. I'm just curious for you, what has your experience been with burnout? Is that something that you've experienced?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's a continuum here of stress to fatigue to burnout. And, there are some diagnoses now around burnout and what some qualifiers of our burnout, and one of those, depending on who you read, one of those qualifiers is a sense of hopelessness. So that burnout, that's a characteristic of burnout, is a sense of hopelessness. And I don't know if everybody, when they say I'm burned out, is using that as a qualifier.
Right. Yeah. It's like when people say I'm depressed, but it's not like you have
clinical depression. Right. You're just down.
Right. Or I'm anxious. Yeah. Anxiety. I have anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't want to get too caught up on labels or characteristics or qualities, those kind of things. But I do think it's interesting and important to be aware of a continuum of these things. That there's, that there's feeling stressed, and feeling stressed is normal and common, and we all feel stressed at times. And it's important to feel stressed at times, right? That's a normal physiological response to feeling threatened in our environment, or challenged, even feeling challenged in our environment, that we will have a stress response to it. Now, if that continues and we end up having continual stress responses, then we end up with chronic stress. So, and then chronic stress can create that slippery slope down into burnout, where there's a sense of hopelessness. So I have had, experiences in my life where I've had a sense of hopelessness in my early life. Pre 20 years old, I went through a period of my life of significant sensing of hopelessness. In my adult life, from that perspective, I don't know if I've ever felt burned out, but I would, in my past life, say that I am of among the, something like 76% of people who have felt or do feel significantly stressed every day, such to a degree where it is taking away their capacity to be productive in their work life. And, part of my story is through that experience of being chronically stressed, that I had had health issues. I had extremely high blood pressure. I had sleep disturbance. I had acid reflux, chronic back pain, headaches, lots of things that are all associated with chronic stress as well. So I have been there, most certainly.
I think one of the interesting things that is just changed, as we're reading this Forbes article that's in the comments there, is that the World Health Organization has just redefined what burnout means, because it's spreading so quickly. So it used to be the state of vital exhaustion, and now it's chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. I think you and I could probably take a week and just talk about that sentence right there. Like, that redefinition is actually incredibly interesting. But just for the purposes of this conversation, I think it's interesting that workplace has become part of the identifier. And one of the things that I think is a good thing about that is we can start to really look at, okay, now we know like where to go to work when we're going to look at this burnout thing. People oftentimes want to know from us whether, are we talking about business? Are we talking about personal? And you and I are a big fan of making sure that people understand that you're the same person that goes to work as the same person that goes home. So I think there's a tremendous amount of personal evolution that can happen. And it's so beneficial to have like an entry point for so many people. It's like, oh, it's a workplace thing. And so we can go to our workplace. It also, I think, raises the bar for our workplace to really step up. And a lot of workplaces, I hope, if you're watching, your workplace does, they have initiatives, and they are really working towards professional development and personal development at work. This is something that happens all the time. So I think that's kind of cool that now there's like this door opener. I'm always a fan of door openers.
Yeah. And I think that door had to open, Ani, because in the past, decades ago, probably, really like in our parents' generation, work was really in a container where you went to work and then you worked your 8 hours and then you came home from work and then there was no more work.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a continual focus on it. But nowadays, with these things that we have going on and computers, and certainly now work from home, it's like we're not getting there's no escape from work. Work and life now are one thing in every sense, at least here in the US, which we all always had a very high value on work in the US too. Think about in industrialized countries, in the US, we take the shortest amount of vacation time than any other country in industrialized, nations, sort of thing, as standard kind of vacation time. So you can see as a culture, we have a huge value on work. And now it's blending together. So we're not really ever escaping work. So work is no longer in a container. We're always working. We're always working. So you think about burnout now being defined as kind of like just like bleeding over into everything we do. Well, that's because we always seem to be working. And even if you're running to the store between job tasks, you still got this thing with you. And you're still getting messages and phone calls and texts and all that thing around a work job that needs to be done. So we're always on call, basically. And I really think that is contributing to this sense of hypervigilance around work. And anytime we're not completely disconnected from it, our level of stress, chronic stress, is going to continue to rise.
I think it's interesting that you're talking about this, because there are so many ways in our society where we're integrating. I mean, just look at COVID. It was like the first time where all over the world, we were all dealing with the same thing at the same time. You could look at gender and how the lines between gender are blurring. There's so much that's going on in the world that is really related to our integration. And you bring up a really amazing point about like people used to go to work and go home for probably shorter work days too, kind of generally, right?
Mhm.
And now it's like we're working all the time. So there's the natural laws are always at play. There's always a massive opportunity in the face of massive challenge, and we are massively challenged in dealing with the burnout epidemic at this time. So one of the things that the Forbes article that we're referencing is talking about is it's no longer okay to deal with burnout or burnout prevention or burnout management methods every once in a while. They're talking about daily burnout prevention. And I think, again, kind of like this integration kind of thing, it's really interesting, right? Like, on one hand, the problem is so bad, we've got to be doing things daily. On the other hand, there must be a really incredible opportunity. And you and I see that there's a massive opportunity in that daily look-see and the kinds of things that people are recommending that happen.
Yeah, and the reason why it needs to be daily now, Ani, is because, again, I'll reference, like, again, years ago, decades ago, when the office closed, and the manager, whoever, said, "Get out of the office because we're locking the doors." And so there was some force outside of us kicking us out of the office, making us leave, like disconnecting us from the place where we did work. And nowadays, since we're working all the time, is bleeding in everything else we do, no one's doing that. Like, we need to push ourselves away from our desk or get up from our own computers. It's more on us now, isn't it? There's not some external force like telling us to do it. We're responsible for doing it ourselves. And that takes energy to do that. It's easier to be like, oh, I'll just bang out this other thing, or I'll get this one more thing done, or I got to take care of that too. And then pretty soon we never got up from our desk. We never really took care of ourselves. We never really made the choice to do it ourselves. But that's why it needs to be daily, because we're doing that to ourselves daily now. It's compounding so much faster than it used to. In the past, it might take weeks or months for work stress to compound because we were disconnecting from it. Nowadays, we're not disconnecting from it, so it compounds so much faster.
You're bringing up something interesting. You and I have backgrounds in health, both the Western medical system and in our own private holistic practices. And one of the things that throughout the years, as we've been practicing together, that was challenging in the health realm was getting people to take personal responsibility. And there's all kinds of stuff around it. One of the things is that we have insurance companies, and we have all these drugs, and people just want a pill to fix them. But when people really do take the energy to do certain strategies, and it takes energy, rather than just looking for the pill, they can get sustainable changes and transformations, and they can, do things that they couldn't do when they were just looking for the pill to fix them, because of course the pill compounds and compounds. So I think another interesting opportunity that I'm hearing is a really great opportunity for us to take more personal responsibility for ourselves and our health, actually, specifically. So that's kind of interesting how that's showing up.
Yeah. One of the things I really appreciate about the Forbes article, again, that we're referencing, Ani, is it's an article, it's a brief article, so there's not a ton of detail on this, but it was referenced, so I want to bring it up, is that when we talk about chronic stress, which leads to burnout, however it's categorized, it's heading in a direction that's not good for anybody, sort of thing. That on the first level, on a daily level, daily practice, is we need to do things in order to shed the compounding effects of chronic stress on ourselves. That's like the first thing we need to do. And, we talked about this a few weeks ago, actually, with our core centering program that we run, right? So the core centering certification, that's what that's all about, is having time-tested, proven methods to shed the effects of chronic stress on our bodies. So that's like step one. Like, that needs to happen every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm so, you said step one. I was waiting for step two.
Oh, so I didn't know if you want to talk about step one or not.
What's step two?
Oh, step two. And step two, we'll be back next time with step two. No, I'm just kidding. So step two is modifying, right? Modifying and reframing the subconscious patterns that create burnout in the first place.
Right. So this is so cool and so important because the way that we think about this problem right now, the way that we think about stress and we think about burnout is about doing something like all fabulous things to do, breathing and meditation and yoga and, take a time out and, listen to John Legend on Headspace. I saw that commercial on the Super Bowl, and do all of those things, which are awesome. And then step two. So I'm really excited that we paused before step two because it's super, super important. You've got to look at what's going on, the underlying patterns. And actually, you can do that through one of the techniques that the article was talking about paying attention to your body sensations.
Yeah, right. So the article highlighted kind of 4 questions that an employee could ask themselves on a daily basis to begin to kind of shed burnout. So they're, well, what am I doing right now? What am I thinking right now? What am I feeling right now? And what are my body sensations right now? What body sensations do I have right now? Well, right here at the Somatic Coaching Academy, like that's what we're all about. We're about tapping into complete human intelligence. And one of those underutilized areas of human intelligence is what's happening in our soma, in our system. So I think that those questions are really, really important. And there's a really important asterisk that we need to add on to that one of those questions is that whenever we're asking about body sensations, whether it's our own sensations or whether we are a facilitator or a coach asking about someone else's sensations, one of the things that happens in our bodies, in our soma, is the computation and the pattern construction around past history and trauma. So oftentimes when we are working with sensations or drawing people's attention to their sensations, sometimes what that can do is actually bring up responses that are correlated with people's trauma.
Yeah, exactly. And since 90% of people are, directly affected by trauma in their history, 90%, we've got to assume actually that the people who are in front of us or around us or with us have experienced trauma. That's a really good point, Brian, because the body sensations do hold the key. And if you're a person who's asking somebody else about their body sensations, you really have to be ready to handle the conversation that comes after that. And not just the conversation, Brian, but, because those sensations can really touch upon our trauma, you have you may be putting somebody in a position of all of a sudden feeling very, very vulnerable and naked in front of you. So we have to really honor people enough to recognize that, maybe we're not the right person to be asking that question, even though it's an amazing question, if we don't have the background to be able to handle what comes next or what that person might feel like when they're being asked that question.
Right. Yeah. So I'm a huge advocate of somatic work, right? We're at the Somatic Coaching Academy. I believe that somatic focused work is the way. I mean, it is like I'm putting a stamp.
It is, yeah.
Right now, it is the way that we become whole again. And when we are whole again through somatic practices, burnout isn't an issue. So part of the issue too is we're trying to stop burnout, right? But we're focusing on burnout, which creates more of an issue of burnout.
Well, I'm laughing because you said the punchline, and the punchline is whole. And the thing is that so much of how we're trained as humans, the wonderful expertise that we've gained in our background and our credentials and stuff, a lot of the ways in which we're trained are polarized kinds of solutions is the thing. And so, we're at the Somatic Coaching Academy. We're big believers of coaching. Coaching is amazing. It's transformed my life. We transform people's lives every day with it. And the way that we're taught and trained as coaches is, very oftentimes a polarized way of thinking about the world. It's just from the tenet of we look ahead, we do not look back, kind of thing, doesn't embrace the way our physiology works, the way our subconscious mind works. It doesn't embrace holism, the natural laws, and all of those things. So making sure that we're coming genuinely from a place of looking at the whole. And one of the ways that you can get a sense, if you're a practitioner who understands even I was going to say like how to do this, but even the importance of the coming from the whole is this something that you work on in your own life to really not just like get ahead, but to really understand the whole picture, or really understand the wholeness around how people work, or your experience with things like that. I mean, that's a really good indication of whether or not this is like kind of a come from for you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, do the somatic work and be well prepared, well trained, and able to meet whatever comes up in the experience of activating somatic work. I think that's really the punchline for me when it comes to helping people to live in such a way where burnout isn't even a consideration for life.
And one of the reasons this has to be a daily practice, Brian, is because the subconscious mind does not have a sense of time. And so the subconscious mind is always in the moment. And so in any moment, we have the opportunity for a breakthrough. So, the burnout prevention as a daily practice is awesome. It's so great. And as I'm sure you are too, super excited to see the evolution of this work as we really get to a place. I'm feeling actually rather hopeful, maybe even for the first time in 20 years, that we're going to get to a place where we're not having these kinds of conversations anymore, because I think we're really getting to the bottom of it. And one of the tips off for me around that is the fact that a Forbes article is mentioning body sensations. So exactly. Bravo, Forbes, bravo.
Yeah.
So if you know somebody who needs to hear this topic, perhaps they're dealing with burnout, or they're a leader or manager, for sure they're dealing with people who have burnout, please feel free to share it. We would love that. Pop your insights, questions, comments in the comments below, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. We would love for you to click that subscribe button or like our page so that you get live feeds the next time we go live. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.